tough crowd here. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, and for all of those of the Jewish faith and all of those that are interested or supportive, I just want to remind everybody about this being Passover today, and hope that this is a good celebration for those that are celebrating Passover. And with that, I'll ask the clerk to take the roll.
Supervisor Foy? Here. Supervisor Parks? Here. Supervisor Long? Here. Supervisor Zaragoza?
Here.
And Supervisor Bennett.
Okay, if you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please, and Rochelle, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and we need a motion on the minutes of Tuesday, April 8th. They've been moved and seconded, and we've adopted the minutes. Agenda review, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Bennett. Just a couple of items. Item 22, Resource Management Agency. Public hearing regarding privately initiated text amendment to the non-coastal zoning ordinance to allow an existing permitted motocross racetrack facility to continue to operate. A PowerPoint has been submitted, distributed, and posted. Item 24, Department of Airports. Public hearing regarding airports 1415 rent and fee schedule. A PowerPoint has been submitted, distributed, and posted. And item 31, Public Works Agency. Approval of plans and specs for Government Center parking lot retrofit phase 2. Request that the item be heard under Public Works Agency rather than Watershed Protection District. Okay, and that's it.
That's pretty clean. Any other changes to the agenda? All right. Motion's been made to approve the agenda and seconded. And the agenda as modified has been approved. It's a real pleasure for me today, for our moment of inspiration, to invite down Joey Thompson, who comes here with his mother, Christine Martinez, and the president of the Boys and Girls Club, Patrick Davidson, and Paul Newman. If you would all four come on down, all right. We need to give Joey all the support we can here, all right? Let's continue to give him the great support that you've been giving him. And before Joey starts, I just want to, he's just a remarkable young man. He's a Ventura High School senior. He grew up with his single mom in an apartment in the Montalvo neighborhood. At an early age, Joey had a scooter accident and was injured badly about it, had a limp, and was bullied. He kind of withdrew and was struggling with lots of issues at that point in time. But in 2002, Joey's mom took him to the Boys and Girls Club on Johnson Drive that many of you pass every time you drive by there. And he's attended that Boys and Girls Club every weekday for the next 11 years. And Joey made the statement that first day, that was the first time in my life I felt like I belonged somewhere. That first day changed my life forever. And now at 17, Joey was just named the Youth of the Year of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Ventura. And before Joey speaks, we have a short little video that we want to put up about Joey, but this is one of those moment of inspiration days. Hold on a second, Joey. This will play, and then we'll put you on. All right. Brian, let them know that we didn't get the video down here. We'll just have Joey speak, and we'll show the video after they leave. All right? Okay. All right. But I know we thought we had a video there all queued up, right? Joey, without a video, right? So
Yeah.
now you get to really perform here for us. All right?
Sounds good. Sounds good. The Boys and Girls Club, as you know, is a big part in people's lives, especially kids like me who come from nothing, come from struggles and stuff. yet the club provides a place where you can have the same chances as anyone else. You take a person like me, like I said, struggles with financial issues. I had problems with my father's and single mom, and now I stand before you guys. Look where I'm at. I'm a youth of the year and stuff, and I literally came from nothing, and it's crazy that I can experience all the things in my life and just completely change my life around. And the Boys and Girls Club is such a big, important thing to me because it not only helped me discover who I was as a person, but it gave me a place where I could be treated the same as everyone else. I could be provided with the support I need in order to do well in school, in order to shape myself as an individual, in order to have confidence and build that kind of stuff. And the Boys and Girls Club it's more than just a daycare. Of my friends, a lot of people in the community think that the Boys and Girls Club is just a place that kids go. But it's a place that literally creates miracles. And I really mean it from the bottom of my heart when I say that it's a place that every kid should have because it provides those chances that kids need in order to get farther in life. And I'm just grateful everything is done for me, and it's a beautiful place. Definitely.
But Joey, this morning you did something good for us, but you also did something really good for the Boys and Girls Club. You reminded us how important it is for us to help and assist the Boys and Girls Clubs in Ventura County to try to get the job done. So you played a real valuable role for the Boys and Girls Club today. Thank you very much. And it looks like we did it backwards. The video is up now. Here we go, folks. There's no sound.
Well spoken, Joey.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There you are.
Can you just plug in the words here while
Yeah, you go out in the workforce and you'll make up one of these things that you just push a button and we never have this kind of issue again, right?
That's right.
It'll be great.
If you guys have any questions, you feel free to ask.
Joey, you're a role model for the rest of our youth. Thank you, and your mom too for helping you out.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to read your lips.
I talk fast, so good luck.
Yeah, telling the story there. Youth of the year, good for you.
That is fantastic.
Looks like we're not going to catch the video here, Joey.
It's all right.
Congratulations. What are you going to do next year?
I'll be working at the Boys and Girls Club.
Great.
And my other job, which is at Skating Plus, so I DJ there. And I'll be doing music and also going to Ventura College.
Great.
So.
Oh, great.
All righty.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations, Joey. Patrick's going to...
Joey's stated goal is to have my job.
There
And
you
so
go.
I'm just keeping the seat warm to this.
That's a great
When you see
goal.
this video, what you see there, that's his video of a rap, of
I
a
wanna
hip hop
see
song
it.
that he wrote,
Oh.
and it's about his experience at the Boys and Girls Club. It's called Young Again. It's extraordinary.
Wow.
This just has a short clip, but we'll send you the link. You really should see this. This produced
thank
it,
I'd like to
wrote
see
it, produced it here, put together in Ventura. It's really inspirational. This is a remarkable young man.
Thank you so much.
Great future.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Hey, Joey's mom, Christine,
Christine?
we just want to say congratulations. All right?
thank you.
It's not easy raising these kids for
Just thank
17
you guys
years.
for the support you guys do, because my son wakes up every day ready to do any kind of community service, and he thinks it's just a normal thing to do.
Yeah,
And,
that's
great.
that's just
great.
amazing. And without your guys' support, kids don't get that kind of chance. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Right. Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Patrick. Okay.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they can try to figure out what's going on there sound-wise and all of that. Okay, the consent agenda, items 10 through 17. We have a motion and a second. And the consent calendar is approved. Do we have any public speakers? No public comment cards? All right. We're ready for board comments. Supervisor Zaragoza.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to share that the other day I did participate in the Crime Victims March with Greg Taunton, and Dugan, and quite a few folks. We had quite a few people here at the Government Center, and it was well attended. And also, the young lady Annabelle, one of the victims, spoke, about her being victimized and her parents and so forth. Did an excellent job, for the community. Also, we had one of my staff members, Lourdes, attended the Good Morning Oxnard breakfast at the chamber, and Chief Williams from Oxnard gave some information on how to protect your home and how to belong to Nextdoor. This new program called Nextdoor, and don't leave your cell phones and other items visible so people won't, break into your cars, and set your alarms at night and so forth. So it was really good information. And of course, we had the Earth Day cleanup and cleanup of McGrath Park. We have over 100 and some participants, mainly children and families that were out there, and we cleaned up the park. And we had Michelle from Southern California Gas. They donated $5,000 to clean the park, and Melissa Baffa from the parks people was there, and there was one person that found two $50 bills. Two $50 bills, and he was out there looking, saying, "Hey, I found two $50 bills." And then the gal there from the host, he says, "Oh, this young man's looking for the 50s." So he gave him the two $50 bills, and the guy was kind enough to says, "Look, you found him, I lost him. Here's 50 for you." So she used that 50 to join the parks, to buy it. Really, really great, And also, I was participated at a grand opening of the Montgomery Self Storage in El Rio. Some really nice self storage buildings to build over next to the JJC. Everything's computerized, got cameras, and the whole thing is really, really, really nice. And last night, I participated at the Knights of Columbus Public Safety Night, where we had quite a few. In fact, Jeff was there with us last night, and Mark Lund and quite a few other individuals, and we honored quite a few of some judges and DAs and sheriffs and Oxnard PD and Hueneme PD and Naval Base Ventura County and quite a few individuals that were honored for their public safety service. It was really, really nice. Jeff, what do we have? A couple hundred people there, maybe? At least 200-300 people there last night. It was. Then after that, of course, I went home and saw the moon, and the. Why wouldn't we go to sleep, and the. But anyway, it was great. It was great. We had a great time. The eclipse. So, and that's. Of course, we did quite a few other things, but that's plenty for right now.
Thank you. Supervisor Ford.
Yeah, I'd like to adjourn in memory of people on this list. There's only two, that's great. Also, just to say congratulations to Derek right there from Royal High School's, Stars Wrestler of the Year. Yeah. I thought we only wrestled up here. I didn't know these other guys out there doing that. But also, and then also the Vietnam Wall is coming to see me over at in the park where they do the memorial on May 22nd and 28th. I just want to congratulate two companies, which is the First Automotive Group and Williams Homes. But they were running short to bring this in, so they put the money up to make sure they can have it. So if you guys haven't seen a replica of the wall that's in Washington, then here's your opportunity. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'd like to adjourn in memory of those folks on this list.
Supervisor Long.
Yes, thank you, and good morning. I also have a list to adjourn in memory. I'd like to call out one, Renee LaSalle. Renee, in addition to serving the United States Navy as an officer and had a long career here in our county, he was my appointee for years on the Waterworks District. And just a really, really very nice man, very conscientious, and he'll be missed certainly by his family. And I'd like to just commend Supervisor Bennett for the heavy lifting with Fox Canyon Groundwater Management, the numerous public meetings, really, really tough decisions to be made as we're all looking to what's our responsibility and roles on the whole drought issues we face in this county. Pacific Coast Business Times has a significant piece on it in this edition. But I monitored the hearings and hearing from the public and those who are affected, and I know those are tough, so, good work, and it was heavy lifting. Good work on that, thanks. And in recognition of this being Passover and with the tragedy in Kansas, I would hope we're all very conscious of Passover as a time where the community, family, and friends come together, and the traditions that are honored and speak to the essence and power of human dignity, liberty, and justice. It's a tough time for those families, and keep them in our thoughts. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Supervisor Parks.
Yeah, I also want to give my kudos to Supervisor Bennett. It was, from reading in the newspaper, very controversial, but it looks like it was nice to see a unanimous decision in the end. I'd also like to close in honor of the people on this list and call out specifically Louise Grethel, just a wonderful community member who gave a lot when she could. She did suffer from multiple sclerosis, but it's interesting that she was able to do so much. American Association of University Women, the PTA, and the Arts Council in Thousand Oaks, and know that she was a avid outdoorist too. So I know that she and the others on this list will be missed. Noticing the NOAA scientists, the meteorologists, have estimated that the chance of having an El Nino by November is now 66%. So looking at the potential of having some major storm activity, you wonder what we can do to help capture that storm water and do rainwater harvesting. I, on the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, have seen some great projects in place, some just underneath high school football fields, being able to use that water then to not only water the fields. And you think about the millions of dollars the park districts spend just watering their fields. If you had cisterns under that, that would save them a lot of money. So there are things that agencies, individuals can do now. If you think 66% is a sufficient enough number to say we should be acting to try to do that before November, but certainly in the long run there are ways that we can be better stewards of that water before it just drains out to the sea. Also at VCOG we had some great presentations, no action or discussion, but particularly was impressed with the deputies, the Sheriff's Department involvement in going out there and reaching out to the homeless and helping them get into this great community of care that we have out there of different nonprofits and agencies, including the county. I also attended a meeting brought back together of the Regional Target Advisory Committee of the Air Resource Board in Sacramento, and just discussing the efforts that have taken place and what can be done to remove or reduce greenhouse gas emissions through land use, which is a really intriguing thing for me. The idea that it's not just trying to reduce through technology, and that's a very important factor, being able to reduce the emissions coming out of tailpipes, but the idea that we can do better with our land use to also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And there are some exciting things that we're doing, and also programs from the we have a great shuttle system working in Oak Park. We are looking at projects, and some already in place, using our flood control channels as pathways for cyclists and pedestrians. So there's a lot of good things that we can do out there to encourage people to use other means than just taking their car, and giving them options. Supervisor Long and I also attended the Sheriff's annual employee recognition program. It's their first one, and look forward to more of those, and hearing about the good works of folks. And then just finally, I wanted to mention there was an article in the actually the Star this morning, but it was finding that a third of all, or a fourth of our California prisoners are mentally ill. A fourth. They're saying, back in the day when the state was closing a lot of the locked mental facilities, a good portion of those folks ended up in our jails. And I just am really encourage that the County of Ventura will be able to have a locked facility here with the mental health resource center, that our residential center that we're looking at building, and looking forward to it being built ASAP. I know it takes longer. It is essentially a hospital, and so it has some strict guidelines that will oversee the construction, but I just really look forward to having that and everything that we can do, and we have done tremendous amounts, and I see Melanie Roy here too with our behavioral health department in trying to find better places than jails for treating the mentally ill. And with that, I think that concludes my comments. And one last thing was you may also be meeting, if you haven't already, with Carrie Bowen, the new superintendent of Caltrans. And it was nice to have that she's reaching out and talking to the electeds, and so it was nice to have a chance to bend her ear a little bit on projects in our area. That concludes my comments.
If I just might, I saw that article this morning too, and it's just startling. And certainly not as a caring society, we should think that's acceptable. And just to say, the airport authority last Thursday heard the application for the rehabilitation center, and it passed unanimously. There was good questions, a lot of good discussion, and Melanie addressed all of them very well, but it did pass, and now it goes for the Airport Land Use Planning Commission, which is VCTC, will be the next step, but it did pass unanimously.
Thank you, supervisors, and I want to thank Supervisors Long and Parks for pointing out the water issue. And if you haven't turned your cell phones off, be sure to turn your cell phones off. But I would like to point out the real heavy lifting done on this water issue was done by the GMA staff and Jeff Pratt. It is supposed to be a small part of Jeff's overall duties, but I know he spent just countless hours in meetings trying to work this out and stuff. So I want to make sure people recognize the good work being done by them. And I have no other comments except to show you this picture. This is a picture drawn between the time of Chris Pruitt's passing away a week ago Sunday and his service, so 6 days later. This is by the students at Foothill High School. And there's something about this picture, and quite frankly, this does not do justice of it, but they had this picture. It's about 5 feet by 4 feet at his service on Saturday. And Chris had a severe hearing loss. He communicated a lot with those eyes and with that smile. And so this is not a time, we've gone through the morning, but 1,000 people showed up at his service. Now, if you've been a high school freshman health teacher for most of your life, most high school freshman health teachers don't have 1,000 people show up at their service. This young man was remarkable, and the things that were said about him in terms of how much joy he brought to everybody, because he lived life just like this picture. It was like, that's his wife down there, and he had on his computer pictures of his wife. People talked about it. I mean, they just had this wonderful relationship. The kids that he touched, she was able to talk. The students that he touched, the things that he did. I mean, people were sad, but they were also truly celebrating. And I just wanted one more time to celebrate a remarkable young man that grew up here in Buena High School, took his hearing disability and took it to the other side. He was going to live life to the fullest and prove that he had what it took. So, Chris Pruitt, thanks for inspiring all the people that you've touched here in Ventura County. And now we're ready to move on with our regular.
And it's nice that you helped to enable him to do that too. Right?
Thank you. Ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on this list, including my next door neighbor, Norm Weitzel, who passed away. We've now, with our normal good speed, we are at item 30 on our regular agenda, and that's CEO's office approval of the Empower agreement with the County of Santa Barbara. Good morning. Ms. Hughes.
Good morning, Chair Bennett, members of the board. Mr. Powers, for the record, Sue Hughes with the County CEO's office, here with a presentation on a program referred to as Empower. Empower started a couple of years ago in Santa Barbara County. They were funded by ARA funding, the stimulus funding. And when they were about due to run out of funding, the Public Utilities Commission and the California Energy Commission said to them, you know, you're doing really good work in Santa Barbara. We'll give you more money if you expand into other counties. So it seemed appropriate that they would invite San Luis Obispo and Ventura County to be participants in this program. So that's what Empower now will be, is Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Ventura County. And before I get started on the presentation, I'm so afraid I'm going to forget this. I really want to thank the women on our team, in our office, Rachel and Kelly and Alejandra, who really do all the nitty-gritty real work on this stuff and make this all happen, and will make this all happen in the future. So you're probably asking yourself, as I like to call it, the who, what, why, and where. The who of the Empower team is Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, San Luis Obispo County. We have 2 credit unions involved in the energy efficiency financing program part of Empower. Coast Hills Federal Credit Union out of the Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo area, and then our own Ventura County Credit Union. I probably should have mentioned that our other partners up there are the CEC and the PUC, since they're the ones helping us get this funding. The funding does come from ratepayers. What the program does, it will help transform existing homes into more energy efficient homes, and it will provide workforce education and training. And the why of it seems pretty simple to us, is it will make more energy efficient homes throughout the Tri-County area, and it saves residents money by doing these upgrades in their homes. So the way we're going to do it, the how we're going to do it, is through public outreach and marketing, and by leveraging those ratepayer funds that are going to someone, so we thought it should come to us. Now, this is sort of a two-pronged approach. There are, in the program services, there's the customer services, the residential, the homeowners, and then there's the workforce services, which I'm going to outline here. As far as the customer services, we want to really make this local, and that's what's nice about this program, is this can be done locally for residents of Ventura County, because we're going to be operating our own program here in Ventura County. And we want to take a whole home approach. That's not so easy to say. A lot of people are interested, and they'll kind of get on the solar bandwagon. I know this is how I was when I first started doing this, was like, oh, solar's the answer. But if your home's not energy efficient, it's really not beneficial to have the solar if you're not going to be energy efficient before you do that. So we want to be able to help do that with marketing and educational outreach. And then, again, with the local customer service, we want homeowners to feel like they have a personal commitment, a personal approach to this. So our team is available by phone, by email, in person when homeowners have questions. We are also going to be having expert energy advising. A couple of us have had Jason in our homes. I was sort of mortified because I thought, my house is like 12 years old. How bad could it be? And then when he started wandering around in the attic, I was like, are you kidding me? Oh, this should be done and this should be replaced, and your insulation isn't as great as you thought it was. So we'll have Jason-like people come out and be able to do whole home audits as part of this program. The residential rebates can sometimes be rather onerous for a homeowner, so we will help walk them through the rebates as part of the tasks that we'll be doing in the program. And then lastly, that I'll talk about in just a couple minutes, is the residential financing, where homeowners can get a personal loan up to $25,000, low interest, unsecured, and I'll show you that chart in just a second. As far as the workforce services, we will be able to offer energy efficient training to the workforce so that they can go out and do these upgrades in people's residences. So it's a real benefit to the workforce that's out there. We also will have available to the workforce a home performance tool lending library so that they don't have to go out and purchase all those tools. They can borrow the tools out of the library, use them to do these upgrades in residences. And the workforce will also have availability when we do events and we do public outreach, that they can participate in those events as well, so that their name gets out there and people know that they're available to do this kind of work. This gives you an idea of how the financing works. Important for this discussion is the column that's in purple. That shows you what type of a loan the Empower loan is. And again, the energy efficiency financing option is just one portion of the whole package of what we can do with Empower. So if a person has a Jason-like person come in their house and do a whole home audit, and they decide that they want to go through the Ventura County Credit Union or Coast Hills in the northern part of our tri-counties, it would be an unsecured personal loan, no closing cost, no equity required in your home. There's no prepayment penalty. The most you can borrow is $25,000 for a term of 15 years with a starting rate of 5.9%. And approval time, you'll know in a day or less if you're approved, and your FICO score needs to be 590 or above. The reason we put the other ones on this chart is sort of to give you an idea of what other types of things are available. So, for example, with a home equity line of credit, that second column there, it would require equity. Same with a refi. And when you move across the columns over to where what we had originally talked about a number of years ago was a PACE program, Property Assessed Clean Energy. We have not ventured into the PACE world ever since FHFA came out with their ruling about those types of loans. They were concerned because those became the loan of preference, for lack of a better term. They became first due in any kind of, if you were foreclosed on. So FHFA had a problem with that. So we veered away from that program. But with Empower, so long as you're a homeowner and you qualify for the loan, you can borrow up to $25,000 to do these kinds of upgrades on your home. And again, that's just one portion of the larger Empower, is this financing program.
Susan, on the refi, going back to the other one.
Uh-huh.
The refi, the specific loan, or combine it with a mortgage loan?
Combined with a mortgage loan.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's a good deal.
And then we wanted to give you an idea in the last couple of years what they've done in Santa Barbara County. So this gives you an idea of the number of workshops that they've done, how many energy coach site visits they've had for people who've called and said, I'd like someone to do an audit in my home, the number of projects that they've completed with a 30% energy reduction, which are really good numbers. They have 40 projects currently in progress. They have done $600,000 worth of energy upgrade projects and 33 energy efficiency training for contractors. And that's a big deal, we think, for the workforce out there. So this is what Santa Barbara County has done to date with this program. This is one of the reasons the PUC and the CEC said, you know, if you can expand this, we're happy to give you more money. We believe for Ventura County, the advantages are, if you look at the number of single-family homes that we have, that 166,000 number, 66% are owner-occupied. So that gives you a large pool to advertise to say you're owner-occupied. And quite frankly, if a landlord wants to do this to his home and has tenants, they're just as eligible to be able to do this because this is a personal loan that you take out and you can have a whole audit done in your home. The Tri-County program, we're all in it together. We all do the training together, so we're not redundant in the way that we do things. And there's funding available for us to participate, so we don't like to leave money on the table. And if they're going to give us the money, why not run the program? It's completely pass-through, so it's pass-through. Santa Barbara is the central locator of it. We do whatever work we're doing. We submit the invoices to Santa Barbara, and they cut us a check. So we believe the other advantages for us is we have established infrastructure. The county has now taken over the administration, and with that, marketing and outreach for Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance. We have the relationships with the cities to be able to work on a program like this. They're very interested. I've gotten several emails in the last couple of weeks. When is Empower going to the board, because we want to get on board with the program. We have a great history of working together with Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties. You get that coastal thing going, and the tri-county things really seems to work. And we've already begun outreach to local contractors who are interested in getting some work done. So that is the Empower program, and so what we're looking for today is the okey-doke to have the chair sign the contracts and let us get rolling.
Sue, a couple of things. One, this is a really good program for us to get involved in. You know, we started with that PACE program years ago, trying to get it going, and to have something that's better than PACE actually come forward is really nice. It's taken a while, but hopefully we can really use this to educate people. And I assume people can get the energy audits and then not go forward with
That's
this,
true.
which is something that people may want to really take advantage of,
Right.
in terms of getting those energy audits. The other thing, the question I have is, what's a Jason-like person anyway? You know, no, that's fine.
Wait, I tell you.
Supervisor Long, right?
I had a Jason-like person come to my home.
Oh yeah.
First thing I'd like to say is thank you and your team for the tenacity of continuing to work with this and bring this forward, because as we did try to go down the PACE route, we found obviously it wasn't going to work because of the federal rulings. But I did have a Jason person come to my home to do an energy audit, and I too don't have an old home. But it was interesting in what was found, and then what work we did do in our home with our funds to make it more energy efficient, to a point now that we may not do the solar roofing because we have reached a good level of energy efficiency. But it was very efficient, thorough, and what I also liked is that the contractors that were provided as a, have one or two come through and give you assessments did. So we then made the choice of what work we wanted done. And just a reminder to the board that these are your public goods charges that we all pay on every bill. And I think for years we've had our own questions up and down the state as to how those public good charges come back to this county. Last time I heard it was $30-40 million in collections, and so, and the energy companies obviously do various rebate programs and other things that they do, but I think they're being much more proactive now in the counties as a result of the work of the Regional Energy Alliance and the Regional Energy Networks and the advocates up and down the state. And this is one example of that. I think this is an excellent program for us to be a part of and to partner with Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo, and will offer homeowners an opportunity to become more energy efficient.
Thank you.
I have
Supervisor
a
Clark.
question. Is it possible to focus these for people of more lower income?
Probably the best way to answer that question is the two criteria would be if you're a homeowner and if you can qualify for the personal loan. As far as doing the financing program, so long as you're a homeowner, you can call to have an audit done, to have someone come in and tell you what you need to do. Some people will have the audit done and say, I'm going to refinance my house, or I have the cash to be able to do it, but at least now I know what I have to do. So it's based solely on if you're a homeowner and if you're going to do the financing, that you can qualify for the loan.
I guess just looking at if it is, for example, people in mobile homes, would this apply to them?
It does not apply to mobile homes, but the Synergy program applies to mobile homes. So we can supply you with the information on doing upgrades in mobile homes.
So just look at some people have limited incomes. They may have bought their home, they're retired, they don't have much money coming in, and this would help them. And I just would like to be able to see if we could have an emphasis for people of lower income in the prioritization. I don't know if that's possible, or at least maybe in the outreach, that there's something that we can do so it's not just something that people of higher income will be using.
And our public outreach will go countywide. So we'll have available, in Santa Barbara County, they did television ads, they did all sorts of things. So as we expand the marketing and outreach, we'll have an opportunity to do that. Also, we were just chatting this morning, many of you have Macs, those kinds of things. So if you're looking for us to do that kind of outreach in a neighborhood, in any of those, where once we get up and running, we're happy to come out and give a presentation, hand out the marketing materials, all of that.
Great, we'll keep you busy.
Okay.
So the maximum is $25,000?
The maximum on the financing
financing.
program is $25,000.
So somebody does have to have the resources to be able to pay that $25,000.
Correct.
Could you just, for the benefit of everybody, just give that phone number for that people can call to get started in this program?
Rachel, what's your phone number? 654-3887.
All right.
And they'll be talking to
Thank you.
Rachel.
Supervisor
Rachel's going
Long?
to do programming.
Yeah, just, and I appreciate that focus on the low-income folks. The Community Action Partnership has programs that they really help low-income folks with, particularly with energy retrofits and needs they have. So it's probably not a large enough pool of funds, but they do a very good job.
And that's a good point, that maybe they can work together, at least know each other, because they're doing this
Let them know we have that service
weatherizing and
available,
things
sure.
like that.
Yeah.
Well, and also the utilities, and it depends on which city you're in. For example, the city of Oxnard has a weatherization program that they work with the utilities. So you can, I've seen people, it's been several years, I'm not sure if the program is still as robust as it was, but I remember seeing people getting, all their windows replaced as part of the weatherization program. So a lot of it depends on which city you're in as they partner with the utilities.
And that might be great if you could partner with the cities when you're putting out that information, that maybe you can include something for
And I think the
low-income,
city
too.
still has that program.
Oh, the cities will be included in all of this information, especially Oxnard's very interested.
Do they have
in
a
where we are.
program for broken water tanks that flood your home?
No, but I might need that.
Away from the wall.
Just real quick, thank you to Sue and your team for launching this program. And I think it's great you're building on a program. You're not having to start from scratch. So it looks like in a short period of time, Santa Barbara's been pretty successful.
They have been.
What's their secret? What's different about this, do you think?
I think the need was out there. I think that people saw, a lot of times people think of coastal counties as the weather is so Mediterranean and you don't really need those kinds of things. But when you get a little bit inland, you talk Santa Barbara County, they did a lot of this in Solvang. They did a lot of this in homes that were maybe built in the 20s, and somebody wanted to buy a new home or buy an older home and said, oh my gosh, can I afford to do all these? So at the time that they're buying the home, they're also getting an audit done to see. And so I think the need is out there, and people are interested in doing these kinds of things, especially as rates go up on utilities. People are looking to save money.
And Southern Gas is doing a really good job in advertising and marketing and telling the people about energy savings.
So we work hand in hand with the utilities on doing all of these programs that we run out of the CEO's office.
Okay, we're ready for a motion?
Thank you.
We've approved
Thank you.
staff's recommended actions, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're now at item 31, and this is the Public Works Agency.
I should have mentioned, Ventura County Credit Union is actually,
Oh, great,
sorry, I didn't realize.
great. Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Clifford.
Good morning, Chair Bennett, members of the board, Mr. Powers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tully Clifford with the Public Works Agency, and I'm the Director of the Watershed Protection District. I'm here today with what I feel is a good news story. I'll give you a brief outline of our Green Streets Urban Retrofit Project, and it's too bad we didn't have a word actually that started with L that went after streets, because then it would be the green slurp. But unfortunately, that's the way it goes. I think this is a very timely matter to bring before you, given the drought and given the way that we tend to waste a lot of water on our paved surfaces. It's unfortunate that Lucas wasn't here, because I think this is something that would be very much of interest to him. I don't know if I have a slide presentation that's going to be coming up, but I hope. I'll continue without, so there we go.
How about local urban retrofit? Then you can get your slurp in
Oh.
there.
This slide shows the County Government Center, which is the site of the project. It's very important here to point out that we have 39 acres of impervious pavement here and about 3,200 parking stalls. Facility was built in about 1978, and back in those days we really didn't think very much about doing something with the stormwater. We instead just captured and sent it to the ocean. So this project is designed to change that. What we intend to do with this project then is to capture a lot of the initial first flush of the storms and infiltrate it into the ground. So rather than sending it out, we hope to capture it. We'll use the impervious pavement, and then we'll use trenches and dry wells to capture the water. This is actually the second phase. The first phase of this started in parking lots A and B and is currently operational. It seems to be working very well. It's treating about 5.6 of the 39 acres. And these projects, incidentally, have been funded through Proposition 84. We're now continuing with Phase 2, which is the remainder of the government center. The grant was awarded to us from Proposition 84 in April of 2013, and we've finished up the design. Now we're moving into the implementation. And we expect that to start this summer. We anticipate giving notice to proceed in May of 2014. And unfortunately, as we do this, there are going to be some issues associated with it. We're working in a parking lot, and naturally people do not like to be interrupted when they're in the parking lot, but we will be doing some interruptions. We'll try to minimize that by working at night so we don't impact the daily operations here at the government center. We'll also be working to make sure we don't interrupt the utilities accidentally. We'll be doing some extensive surveys of those. A beauty of the program will allow us to do some monitoring of the water quality coming off the parking lots. They're one of the areas where we get some really bad water, when we get the first flush from storms. So we will be watching that both from a storm and from a dry weather perspective. And we want to make sure that people are aware of the program, so we put out our brag boards, our educational signs, so that people can see them. We currently have some located on the far side of the Hall of Justice, and we'll be putting some near this building as well, so that people can see them. And incidentally, as they were being installed, we already had people wandering up there to take a look at them, so it was very positive. The other thing that we'll be doing for people with the smartphones is we'll be putting the curb markers out, and you can actually click on that little square thing, the QR code. Some of us aren't nearly as technologically capable as others, but it will then take you to a site where you can gain additional information just walking by the curb. We think it's a very worthwhile thing to do. We also have a project website, and that's where when you click on that will take you here, which will offer a lot of information about the project. And I think that that's very important, and it's sort of one step in our outreach. One thing that we really want to do in the Watershed Protection District, in fact, in all the Public Works Agency, is to make sure we reach out to stakeholders a lot more, reach out to them earlier, and get their ideas and try to incorporate their ideas. We've had lots of different ideas on this one. You may, in fact, hear from Paul Herzog from Surfrider. That's the type of organization that we want to start partnering with, and we want to start partnering with them earlier in a lot of our operations. We want to even partner with them before we have these ideas, so we can see what they're interested in, how it ties in with our workload, and how we can actually then partner together to get bigger bang for the buck and get far greater environmental enhancements as we move forward. And we can start doing those with and without grants. We can do them with our operations and maintenance program as well as with our capital program. So we're very excited about it. And so what we're looking for today is we're looking for the board to approve the plans and specifications as well as addendum number 1, waiving any minor bid irregularities and awarding the contract to the lowest responsible bidder in the amount of approximately $982,000. And with that, I would be able to answer any questions you may have, and I have my capable staff here to assist me.
How deep are you going to be digging here for these?
For the wells themselves?
That's right.
In the neighborhood of 15 feet.
All right. And that's you're going to dig down 15 feet for how long? How long will that?
For the distance?
Yeah.
There's several sections along there.
Yeah.
David, do you know the distance? This is David Kirby.
Chair Bennett, board members,
Good morning, David.
Mr. Powers. I'm David Kirby, water quality engineer with Watershed Protection District. What we are doing here with the design is we have infiltration trenches, which are approximately 3 feet below the permeable pavement, and then below that we have dry wells that would then bring all the water down to the soils that are acceptable for infiltration, and that would be about approximately 15 feet below the surface.
Did you know the length of those?
And the length of these surfaces vary throughout the parking lot. They're situated next to existing catch basins, and depending on the amount of water that will be going to those areas based on the drainage areas, those lengths vary from 50 feet to approximately 250 feet.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Quick question. When we had some of our bigger rains, when we did, just those few days, were these able to catch most of the water, or did we still have a lot of runoff?
We still do have runoff. What this is designed for is basically looking at the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, or SQURP, technical report 343 was specific to parking lot runoff and identifying the portions of each rain event that has the highest level of pollutant concentration. And what we found and what they've shown in their report and what we've kind of designed around was the first 15 minutes of every storm contains approximately 70% of all pollutants coming off of a parking lot. So in the way of trying to formulate a low cost, low maintenance, minimizing disturbances to the parking lot, we came up with this design to infiltrate, to store, capture, and infiltrate the first 20 minutes of every 0.5 inch storm or less. And that would include all irrigation runoff, 100% of all dry weather flows as well.
So once it rains, it washes most of the dirt in, and then if it's a little bigger, then it takes some of it out. But like you said, 70 or 80% of it gets caught here before it gets out into the street and on down to the gutters. Huh?
That's correct. And as Tully had mentioned, we're doing, as part of this grant agreement, we have to do water quality monitoring. So we're doing flow and pollutant concentration monitoring to verify that what we are saying we're going to be doing will actually be effective. And our obvious goal is to try to find this low-cost, low-maintenance alternative for other people to use as well in certain situations similar to ours.
Can this last for a long, long time, or does the dirt and everything else start to pack in there and it's hard to get that to...
We do, and we will be implementing a stringent maintenance program, as we want to make sure the longevity of the project is there for, the grant agreement I believe is 20 years for the longevity of the project, and then obviously we want to keep going beyond that. So we have already doing street sweeping capabilities to make sure that we pick up any fines, sediments, organics, leaves,
things that
like
could
that.
plug this up a little bit.
And then approximately once a year, at first, just as a minimum amount, we will be doing pressure washing and vacuuming with a vector truck to actually get those sediments out of the pervious pavement.
Oh, okay.
And from studies that we've seen, it's approximately the top third of the pavement section could be clogged throughout a rainy season. So we propose to be doing that before the rainy season begins, so it's good to go, and then probably again after the rainy season.
So there's some long-term longevity, like you said, to this kind of a program.
There is, definitely.
Supervisor Long.
So what would be the projected maintenance cost then over the period of the grant or the bond funding?
We do have actually a great example of that for the parking lots A and B, which were completed as part of Phase 1. We've been doing the annual maintenance on that. And we found that it's about $1 per lineal foot of these pervious gutters. And so we are proposing for Phase 2 to put in about 4,000 lineal feet, as well as some square footage area of just some pervious pavement areas and some trouble spots. So we're looking probably around $5,000 per cleaning. So that'd be an annual cost. If we do it once, $10,000 if we do it twice, and then on top of that would be the street sweeping cost as well.
Mr. Chair. And this is located on the north side of the center here.
This is actually going to encompass the entire center.
Oh, the entire center.
Currently, lots A and B are completed as Phase 1, and Phase 2 will cover all the other lots, as well as some portions of John F. Johnston Drive.
No, during board comment, I was talking about the opportunity, particularly with, they're saying you have a 2 out of 3 chance that we're going to have an El Nino in November, by November and all, to put in place some things to capture rainwater. But I know this is more the emphasis. It does not only do that, but it also does some cleaning of the water too, which is a good thing. But I just want to note that in this area, the water that we use to water the grasses and all that comes from our well water that we have there. So we're not People wonder if you're wasting water, and it says, as I see it, every opportunity we have to, capture it and use that existing water, but this is essentially the same thing, I would think, because you're putting that water right back there into the wells that you're then using to water. That's an accurate portrayal.
That's correct, and I think that this will be a good demonstration project, but you're absolutely right. We could do more in the future as well from a capture perspective in order to reuse it, and that's something that we're looking at, not just here, but in other areas.
And when I was talking about like the park districts, I know like Caneo Recreation Park District spends millions of dollars just to water their grass, and if they had a cistern that had captured the water under there, they could use that throughout the year. I wonder if maybe our parks in our county parks may be able to benefit from something like that too. As part of our outreach efforts, we'll be talking to as many different organizations, and especially our partners within the county itself, to make some of these a reality and to reduce the cost, reduce the water usage. And not only that system that you're looking at now, but I also, again, plug for, there's some nice industrial-sized cisterns out there you can be putting under blacktops of schools, for example, and they could become landscape play areas that also capture the water. So we need whatever we can do besides these kind of programs, but also ones that actually capture the water too.
Supervisor Foy?
Yeah, let me just ask real quick. Understanding what you're talking about, like you said, most of your project here is water quality, right?
Correct.
Versus how much you catch. But when you did that and you go down 15 feet, you hit certain percolation rates on this kind of location. Is that why you're at 15 versus going 25 or even larger, or because you weren't worried as much about driving water into the water table versus just cleaning water?
Well, we have to have a certain depth in order to enable it to percolate into the ground. So that's where that distance comes from. So we do have to look at the soil conditions in there.
Yeah, I was just curious, because going back to what Supervisor Park said, if you were taking as much water, you're cleaning at the same time, and you're throwing as much into the ground as possible, you could have greater depth, more water could go in and more percolate. But I was just curious if this is purely 90% of what we're trying to do is just clean water before it hits the creeks, right?
Sorry, Jeff, for the record, Jeff Pratt with Public Works. I just wanted to remind these guys that while it's counterintuitive, capturing small storms like this all the time captures the bulk of the volume of rainwater that we see. You might think, for the record, this is going to pass the big storms. It's designed that way. But it's still going to capture probably in the high 70s, 80% of the total volume, depending. And we can calculate that. So it gets at your question. I just wanted to clarify. Because those storms are more frequent, and those calculations were done with that in mind.
So you're saying when it's just typical little rains and stuff, it's catching all that water and we're putting it in versus going out to the road or something?
Right, and while it's counterintuitive, most people think the big rains have the most volume, and they do just for a single event, but not for a course of time. So.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, great.
But specifically the depth of the wells that you're putting in, if they are deeper, would they be able to get into the aquifer better, as Supervisor Foy was asking?
In the concept of the project here, we actually did some infiltration testing and soil analysis, and what we found was the soils, but 3 feet, ideally we would just like to do infiltration trenches or some soil biology enhancement just to be able to make everything infiltrate. But we found high contents of clays up until about 13 feet below the surface. So that means that really anything 13 feet or above we'd have to replace. So that's why we came up with this design. Is the infiltration trenches is essentially 3 feet of storage volume, so that we can actually capture that water, and then as it's infiltrating through the dry wells into the soils that are acceptable for that to recharge the groundwater. 3 feet for the infiltration trench, and then 15 feet for the dry wells.
And if you had a lot more money, you could design a lot better project, I'll bet.
Of course.
And Mr. Chairman, probably I know there's a payback on this too,
I bring that up because I know we've had some conversations about what we can do, and we're with this project in terms of improvements.
That's a good point, but I don't think the design doesn't change much. Is it just larger if you're trying to catch water and infiltrate it? Does it, besides the cleaning portion of what you're doing?
That's true. It's what we were doing again was based on the technical report for the SWRP there that identified the percentage of pollutants, and we wanted to make sure that as our grant agreement that we're able to show that. So we designed the system to capture that amount of water, which is approximately 160,000 gallons per event. That's just for storage, and then after infiltration for the full event reaches about the 200,000 gallon mark for the entire project.
Oh, good. Okay, great thing.
And we do have a public speaker, Paul Herzog from the Surfrider Foundation, Tully made reference to, and Paul's been very interested in all of these kind of projects around the county and stuff, so welcome, Paul.
Thanks. Good morning. Well, yeah, Surfrider, I should say Paul Herzog. I'm Surfrider's National Coordinator for the Ocean Friendly Gardens Program, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Ventura County Surfrider Chapter. Yeah, we're in support of the project. As it's already been explained, the value of it to the First Flush. I wanted to also just touch on what Supervisor Parks and Supervisor Foy were just mentioning, and actually Susan Hughes. They're kind of all tied together, interestingly enough. One is that we did a project at Will Rogers Elementary School in Ventura and removed blacktop to let water soak in. But you're not just talking about water moving down. Water is hydrating soil because so much of our cities are covered up, whether it's a parking lot or a driveway or a building or compacted turf. And so we've got soil that's just not alive, and that's why we have plants that are suffering. So what we want are little solutions everywhere. And so when you have at a school site a covered up place that can be turned into a rain garden or a dry stream bed, you're not needing to direct water to a cistern to water that dry stream bed. You're wanting to remove that covered up area to let rainwater soak in, and then plants tap into that water over the course of the dry period. Otherwise, we'd have to be watering our hillsides all the time. So we want to mimic what we see in nature. Now, if you have turf grass, that's a different story, because we get about 10 to 14 inches of rain, depending on where you are in the county. Turf grass uses about 45 to 50 inches, so you have to make up the difference possibly with the cistern. But there's many other things that you could be doing to maintain your turf grass more organically, kind of like how we can improve the efficiency of homes before we go to solar panels. The other thing I wanted to mention was the importance of training. It was really interesting, Susan Hughes was talking about how we can train the workforce, and the project that's being done here is great. But how are we going to get projects like this done all over the county? Surfrider can work certainly with Watershed Protection District to do projects as demonstrations, but if we're really going to scale up, we need to be training workers. And I would hope that in the future when we do projects like this, they can be hands-on workshops where we can be training the private sector so that they learn by doing, and then use all of the resources that Susan Hughes was talking about for energy efficiency to extend that into the landscape. It'd be interesting if that program took in the landscape, because some people can't afford to redo their landscaping without that kind of financing. So if you truly want to do a whole home retrofit, I would take in the landscaping as well. The thing I want to make is a statement about, though I think as clearly as I can, is the importance of healthy soil. So, and I've had the benefit of talking to the Watershed Protection District staff about this prior to coming here today, and I think we're on the same page. It's not just about moving water through soil. We want to have soil that acts like a sponge. And that means healthy soil biology, good soil structure. It's a lot more going into the weeds than probably should do here. But it's something that everybody could do at their homes, at every work site, at every public site. It's not that we have to dig these huge trenches. This is I think a fairly unique situation because you have so much covered up material here, 39 acres that are essentially covered up. However, as I was parking this morning, before I did, I drove around the facility, and I saw over by where you have the demonstration kind of composting area, there are some planter beds that are sunken, whereas all the other ones around this lot have curbs around them. And that, if anything, is counterintuitive. Pick on Mr. Pratt's comment. It's having curbs around plants, because they're the things that want the water. And the curbs generate runoff, in a sense, because you're directing it to another location. So we might think about kind of reversing our idea about planter beds and removing some of the curbs so that they're sunken, because we want water to go into plants and then it prevents runoff. So we want to hydrate plants and we want to prevent runoff, kind of a 2-for-1. So I noticed that in some areas, so maybe we can think about doing that in the future. So cutting curbs, sinking areas so we can slow spread and sink water. So anyway, very happy about this project. Look forward to working with you all.
And you bring up some suggestions that maybe something that we think about as we think about our building codes, et cetera, as they go forward in terms of that. So, Paul, thanks for taking the
You're
time.
welcome.
You've been staying on top of this stuff for Surfrider, so thank you. And do we have any other questions for staff? Mr. Clifford, any last comments for us?
Just one last comment I have is a project like this is something that we would be undertaking anyway, regardless whether we had Proposition 84 funding or not, because it's a mandate under our stormwater program. And so I just want to let the board know that we're going to continue looking at these type of items, continue working with other organizations, refining our ideas and concepts as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you,
your forward lean in terms of trying to work with organizations like Surfrider and thinking about these things and stuff. And congratulations, staff. These are fun projects to kind of bring forward
Thank you.
for your community.
And with the drought, we're so focused on, get the water into the aquifer, so I can understand your comments too.
As Mr. Herstog was speaking, I was thinking, the word energy efficient kind of just completely dominated the lake, but we're going to have to become water efficient in Ventura County.
That's right.
Certainly as we go forward. All right, we have a motion and a second in front of us. We're ready to vote. Go forth and save more water. All right. Thank you. All righty. We have a 9:45, and so we're going to take a 2-minute. Well, no, hold on. We got a policy matter. That's fine. Supervisor Long, and we don't have to do. Do you want to do your policy matter? Okay. All right. Supervisor Long,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a recommendation, pretty straightforward, to look at having a special meeting in Camarillo on October 14th at 6 p.m. We've started the discussion with the city, and that date is good for them. And it, as said in the letter, will give us an opportunity to celebrate with the city their 50th anniversary of incorporation. So I'd ask for your support to take our show on the road.
So do we have to wear attire from the...
I'll send you all a memo.
All right, 50 years ago. And
I hope it's not disco.
50 years ago? You are old.
All right. Here we go.
Do we need 33 also?
We've approved that. Let's take we'll take a 3-minute break, and then 9:45 we'll do our time certain night. I'd like to call the board back into session, and 9:45 we have presentation of a resolution proclaiming April 13th to the 19th as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. And hear from the Sheriff's Department. We're honoring Gloria Nevis, I hope I pronounced that right, and Jeff Mercer as Dispatchers of the Year. So would you please come on down, both of you, as well as Aaron Brockus. And so we have resolutions for the 2 Dispatchers of the Year that we're going to do at the same time that we do this resolution, which I will present to Aaron. This is a proclamation of the Board of Supervisors proclaiming this National Public Safety Telecommunications Week from April 13th to the 19th. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time, and the prompt responses of emergency services are critical to the protection of life and the preservation of property of citizens throughout our nation, public safety dispatchers are the first and most critical contact that citizens have with emergency services. These highly trained professionals are depended upon to gather the accurate information that is crucial in ensuring the safety of our citizens and emergency personnel. And the public safety dispatchers and supervisors of Ventura County Sheriff's Office Communication handle approximately 348,000 telephone calls, including 92,000 911 calls in 2013. Each public safety dispatcher managing every call with the highest level of service. We also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Gloria and Jeff on being selected by their peers and supervisors as the 2014 Dispatchers of the Year for Ventura County. And I think we all, unfortunately, have too often heard on the TV or the radio, this is a 911 call, what's your emergency? And there's some crisis out there. And at those moments, you can really tell the great value while the person on the one end of the phone is just completely panic stricken, and the person on the other end of the phone, you can just hear that professionalism in terms of they get the information they need, they help focus the person so that they can be of assistance in the emergency. So I want to congratulate both of you for what you've done, and thank the Sheriff's Office for managing such a great dispatch. And so before we bring these down, I'd like to, Aaron, turn it over to you, and then we'd like to hear something from our two dispatchers if they have any words of wisdom they'd like to pass on to us here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mr. Powers, thank you very much for your time, and I want to thank you very much for your continued support of the Communications Center and recognizing National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. I am honored to work amongst some of the best dispatchers in the county. I truly believe that. I am so proud, especially of these two here. They are two of our most tenured dispatchers, with Gloria having 35 years on the department and Jeff with 30 years. So combined, a total of 65 years of experience, with Jeff actually training me at one point, and now I'm the interim communications manager. So I'm very pleased and honored to work amongst all of our dispatchers, these two especially. So thank you very much. I truly appreciate it.
Good. So Dispatchers of the Year.
Thank you for recognizing all the dispatchers. We work with a great group of people. They're our second family, along with the other agencies that we work closely with. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Jeff?
Just real quick, while we were selected, it really is a team effort, and we really do rely on all of our team members there as well. So it's great to get this, but everybody's involved in most of the calls that we handle. And just to worry Aaron for 1 second, I also need to say that I am a Jedi dispatcher. Just real quick, in briefing this morning, she said, we need a word of the day, and somebody threw out Jedi, and she said, okay, you have to use that sometime today.
To handle that many calls, you have to be a Jedi dispatcher. It's amazing.
You guys save lives every day. Just really thank you so much. And it's nice also you have that nice new center, you know.
And I want to commend you too for being so calm when people call for 911. You can hear the people and despair at the other side, and you're so calm when you say, well, give me some more, where are you, what type of person is it, what kind of car is it? I just want to thank you for being so calm, and thank you for your good work.
Well, thank you very much. And I have to say, these two are by far the calmest in the center. Very much so.
Something I could never do.
Thank you.
Resolution for the Sheriff's
Thank you
Department.
so much.
Thank you very much. And we have a resolution for... These up this way. You're supposed to shoot the picture this way. It is. Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go. Hold on. Come on this side. There we go.
One more time.
One more.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Gloria. Nice that we're able to do both of those awards at the same time. And now we have a presentation, and Michelle Godoy Morales, Donate Life, from Donate Life California. And this is a resolution presented as a DMV Donate Life California month here in California. And this is something that I think is really important. When you find a loved one or a close friend who can't get a organ that they need, and you realize how many organs don't get donated just because people have not taken that step in terms of this, you realize the great value of this. I mean, once somebody is at a state where their organs are going to be valuable, why not pass that on so that somebody else can live? And so this is a proclamation of the Board of Supervisors proclaiming April 2014 as DMV Donate Life California Month. And organ tissue, marrow, blood donations are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. More than 121,000 individuals nationwide, more than 21,000 in California, are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list. And every 90 minutes, one person dies while waiting due to a shortage of donated organs. Just not necessary at all. Those people, there are enough, unfortunately, there are enough people, passing away, et cetera, that in the right circumstances. The need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic and African American communities. More than 600,000 units of blood per year are needed to meet the need in California. At any given time, 6,000 patients are in need of volunteer marrow donors. A single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestines can save up to 8 lives. Donations of tissue can save and heal the lives of up to 50 others, and a single blood donation can help 3 people in need. These are remarkable statistics, Millions of lives each year are saved and healed by donors of organ tissues, and I could go on and on with this, but I'd like to turn it over here, and we to our 2 speakers, we now therefore be it resolved that the recognition of National Donate Life Month, we hereby proclaim DMV Donate Life California Month in Ventura County, and encourage all Californians to check yes when applying for and renewing their driver's license and their ID card. All right. Love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Chairman Bennett, County and Supervisors. Just to let you know, my name, like you said, Michelle Godoy Morales. My brother was on a transplant list waiting for a liver. It's going to be 6 years in October. He was on the list for 7 years. He never received his liver. He passed away shortly before his first grandchild was born also. I promised him that I would continue promoting the importance of organ donation so the other families won't go through what we did, a roller coaster ride. So just to let you know, every 13 minutes, somebody is placed on a transplant list. Every day, 18 people die waiting for a transplant, as my brother did. So it's very important that you do check at the DMV to be an organ donor, or go online, let your loved ones know. My brother, Sal Godoy, had a funny sense of humor, and I carry that on. It may sound bad, but what are you going to do with your organs when you're gone? Give somebody else a chance for life. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Ryan from One Legacy.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Mangan. I'm with One Legacy. I'd like to first thank Michelle for being a champion in this region for Donate Life for One Legacy. We also like to thank the County of Ventura for issuing this proclamation. Without counties and cities' helps in promoting donation, we couldn't get to the 11 million. It was previously 10 million DMV registrations for donation. So now we're at 11 million. As we continue to do this and as we continue to promote donation itself, we thank every person here and in the community that inspires one another for donation. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor.
I wanted to thank Michelle Godoy. I knew Sal for many, many years, and also your dad has volunteered a lot for the Knights of Columbus, and I just want to thank you, Michelle, for your continued efforts in helping and volunteering. And she did a lot of work also for the city of Oxnard. So it's nice to see you, and thank you for being here and to share with us today.
Thank you, Supervisor Zaragoza.
Yeah,
and good of you to continue with your pledge.
Thank you so
to your
much.
brother to
thank you.
continue to do this.
And one of the things that I think you mentioned is that the Latino community needs to respond more so into this effort also. So I think that's important that we convey that too.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so remember, check that box. I'm going to come down and we'll present this.
Okay. That's good. I don't have a calendar, so that's okay. Don't know some mine. Oh, that's go ahead. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is a resolution proclaiming May 1 as Day of Reason in Ventura County, and we have Paul Schmier, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from the humanist community of Ventura County. And the founder, one of the real leaders here in Ventura County, Fred Cavalli, of the Cavalli Foundation, was established in December of 2000 by its founder and benefactor, Fred Cavalli, prominent California business leader and noted philanthropist, whose foundation is currently actively involved in establishing major research institutes at leading universities and institutions in the United States, Europe, and Asia. The Cavalli Foundation, based in Oxnard, is dedicated to the goals of advancing science for the benefit of humanity and promoting increased public understanding and support for scientists and their work. The Foundation's mission is implemented through an international program of research institutes, professorships, and symposiums in the field of astrophysics, nanoscience, neuroscience, theoretical physics, as well as prizes in the fields of astrophysics, nanoscience, and neuroscience. The Ventura County Community Foundation will be honoring Fred Cavalli as their upcoming 2014 Community Leadership Awards luncheon with their Chairman's Award, a special award to honor a person or organization with a long-standing community leadership, extending to the important work of collaboration and partnership with others, and setting an example that serves our region well. The Ventura County Community Foundation recognizes organizations and individuals who go above and beyond the call of duty to better the quality of life here in Ventura County. Paul, we appreciate you coming here, and I'll come down and present this resolution and invite you to address us here.
Okay,
Thank you.
now or?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with the humanist community of Ventura County, and we are a charter member of the American Humanist Association, and this is why we would like to promote the National Day of Reason, which happens to coincide with the National Day of Prayer. Not to replace it, but just to sit alongside it as an alternative to the National Day of Prayer, because only through a critical thought, free inquiry, and scientific method do we improve our lot in lives and improve our fellow man. The humanist community, along with many others in our community, represents 55% of the people in Ventura County that do not belong to an organized religion. The vast majority of people in Ventura County do not belong to organized religion, and they don't support either through membership or financially. But we're still here. We deserve a place at the table, and we see this as a trend that's happening nationwide, and Ventura County certainly hasn't suffered from it. We have institutions like the Cavalli Foundation and Amgen, and we have the two of the safest cities according to the FBI statistics, which just goes to show that you can be a good person and you can contribute to your society and work alongside others. The Ventura County Humanist Group has participated in dozens of community service programs right alongside others with Habitat for Humanity, blood drives, and numerous other situations, feeding the hungry and things, that sort of thing. So we're just asking that we also have a place at the table, and appreciate your honor us. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we'd also like to thank the other cities within Ventura County that have also provided us a proclamation on Day of Reason. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this forward. A place at the table, I think, is important. That table should be welcoming to all. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair Bennett, board members, and Mr. Powers. For the record, I'm Joanne McDonald, Chief Deputy Auditor Controller. I'm here today to ask you to receive and file the single audit report, which has been prepared as required by the Single Audit Act and the Office of Management and Budget. The purpose of this report is to evaluate the financial management and accountability of the county's federal financial assistance programs. The federal grant funds amounted to over $162 million for fiscal year 13, and this report includes no instances of noncompliance. This item also includes the report on the review of the appropriations limit, or the GAN calculation, and here with me today is Roger Alfaro, partner with Vavrinick, Trine Day and Company, our external auditors, to address the auditor's communication with those charged with governance.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Supervisors. For the record, Roger Alfaro with Vavrinick, Trine Day and Company. We have completed our audit process for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2013, and as noted in the deliverables, we have issued an unmodified opinion on the county's financial statements. That's also referred to as a clean opinion on the financial statements. And as part of the audit process, we are, in accordance with our professional standards, required to obtain an understanding of the internal controls employed by the county used in the preparation of the financial statements. And we have reported that we did not identify any material weaknesses within the internal controls as a result of our procedures. As required by federal requirements, also referred to as the Single Audit Act, we're required to perform an audit, a compliance audit of the county's major federal programs for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2013. That audit also requires us to consider the internal controls over monitoring the compliance with respect to those federal programs, as well as rendering an opinion as to whether the county complied with the applicable federal guidelines. And in our single audit report, we've identified that we've issued an unmodified opinion on the county's compliance with the applicable federal requirements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2013. And in addition, no material weaknesses were identified in that report with respect to the internal controls over compliance. Lastly, as part of our required communications, we're pleased to report that we didn't encounter any significant difficulties in the conduct of our field work, nor did we have any disagreements with management with respect to accounting, auditing, or financial related matters. And with that, we appreciate the opportunity to serve as the county's independent external auditors, and I can address any questions.
You've answered some of our questions with your statements about did you encounter any difficulties in terms of getting things done, or did you find anything? But I just want to repeat that as a question from here. And is there anything that you think that you want to communicate to us here at this point in time as the people who most have to have the responsibility for receiving your audit?
No other matters other than what's already contained in those deliverables.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank staff for excellent work. I think it's important that the public understand that our procedures for accounting and budgeting and et cetera are in good hands. And I just want to thank all the staff for the excellent work that they're doing for the county. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for a motion. Thank you for your work, sir. It's been moved and seconded. Well done to everybody involved with the audit.
Thank you.
Okay, we are done with our 10 o'clock items, and with 15 minutes of extra time like usual, the way things run around here, we'll do the correspondence agenda, right? That's a very controversial item. And Mr. Smith, is there something that we could get done in using this 15 minutes efficiently in closed session, or?
Well, you have the performance evaluations you could meet on.
Sure. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll have that initial talk about how do we want to handle the performance evaluation of these two. Perfect. All right, great. Okay, call the meeting back to order for our 10:30 time certain item, and look forward to hearing from our Resource Management Agency.
All right, good morning, Chair Bennett and members of the board and Mr. Powers. Carly Finley, project planner for this screening amendment item. So this request is a privately initiated text amendment to the non-coastal zoning ordinance, and the applicant is Mr. Kevin Keel, who is the current owner of the Piru Motocross facility. And he's here today if you have questions for him later. So the purpose of the hearing is to review the proposed text amendment against the criteria in the non-coastal zoning ordinance for modifications to the ordinance, and then also to conduct a screening as required by the non-coastal zoning ordinance. My outline is, first I was going to go over the text amendment screening process briefly, just to refresh your memories, and then also next I was going to review the proposed text amendment, which is shown in Exhibit 1 of your packet. Then I wanted to summarize staff's analysis of this proposed amendment in conjunction with the criteria presented in the non-coastal zoning ordinance, and then I'll conclude with recommendations and next steps. So to start off, I want to provide an overview of the screening process. And the screening of amendments is required by the non-coastal zoning ordinance and allows the board to determine if the proposed amendment is consistent with adopted land use goals and policies. And also it screens out any clearly incompatible applications that are not consistent with the general plan or the policies of the board, adopted policies. The criteria that's used to determine if the proposed amendment is suitable is found in the non-coastal zoning ordinance, and it concerns, number one, if there are any public health, safety, and general welfare issues, whether or not the proposed amendment is good zoning practice, and then also if it's consistent with the general plan. And as I mentioned, I'll discuss staff's analysis of this criteria in a little bit. So your options that are available today are that you can authorize the Planning Division to proceed with processing this text amendment, or you can determine that it doesn't represent a policy direction supported by the board, or you can determine that the proposed text does not meet the criteria of the non-coastal zoning ordinance. So a couple of final points I want to make are that just if the board does authorize staff to continue processing it, it does not imply that it will be approved. It's just that we will do further analysis and there's additional work to be done, and such as the environmental documentation and other analysis and conferring deeper into it with other agencies that might be affected. So next I want to talk a little bit about the proposed amendment itself. And I'll start with some background and history to give you some context. As mentioned, this section of the ordinance is directly related to the renewal of the CUP for the Piru Motocross facility. And although you're just reviewing the proposed text amendment today, they're closely related. And you can see that in 1996 was when this non-coastal zoning ordinance was amended to allow motocross facilities in the open space zone. And concurrently or immediately subsequent to that, the Piru Motocross facility was also approved. And then in 2000, the Fillmore-Piru Greenbelt Ordinance was adopted, which made this a non-conforming use because one of the siting criteria in the non-coastal zoning ordinances is that they shall not be located in a greenbelt. And then in 2007, the state designated responsibility area, high fire hazard areas, were added to the county's GIS database, and they were more available and readily designated as a high fire hazard area. So that again made it further non-conforming, and is why we are here today. So the application was submitted in a timely manner for the permit to continue operations, and at that time, staff analyzed it and realized that it wasn't in conformance with the zoning ordinance, and that's what prompted this text amendment. And just
While you're on that, because this
Yes.
seems like the appropriate time to ask, so with this text amendment going forward, this applies essentially just to this one situation, because this is the only motocross that was already approved before in the open space, right, before it became Greenbelt.
yes and no, and I have analysis in here, and it's also in that I'm going to go over briefly.
Okay,
and with
great.
regards to the green belts,
Thank you.
that's the case. So this is the location of the project site, and just to the east of Piru. It's outlined in yellow. It's in the open space. You can see the track there. Some of the outlines here of the existing track. There's some orchards to the east, and it's just north of the Center Street and Highway 126. And then I also had the Piru urban boundary landed in, just so you can see the relationship, how close it is to Piru. And then also zoning. So the non-coastal zoning ordinance has the siting criteria, among other things, that allow the motocross facilities, and they're pretty stringent. You can see here, these are all the siting criteria. There are 10 different areas where they're prohibited. And this first bullet lists out, for example, mineral and scenic resource protection areas. They're prohibited in these areas. And then in sphere of influence, area of interest, and planning area of incorporated cities, in the floodplains, in the airport approach and departure zones, the Los Padres National Forests, and then also on lands that are subject to LCAs. And then the two final criteria that are highlighted in blue are they're prohibited in greenbelts and the high fire hazard areas. And here, this is Exhibit 3 of your board packet, and it shows how it is located within the green, which is the green belt, the little blue project site here. And then the red hashing is the designated state responsibility area of a very high fire hazard zone. And this slide shows the proposed text amendment. The underlined portions are what is being proposed to be amended. The existing siting criteria prohibits land within a county-adopted greenbelt area, and the proposal wants to add this unless the facility was initially permitted prior to the adoption of the greenbelt area. And then the second criteria is that they're prohibited within an area designated by the Fire Protection District as a high fire hazard area. And the proposal is to add, unless it's determined by the fire marshal that the potential fire hazards can be mitigated to less than significant level under CEQA, and that the project will not present a high fire hazard risk to the users or the public. And we worked this language out with both the applicant and the Fire Protection District, and at this juncture, everybody's in agreement about this language. And they're all comfortable with it. So next I wanted to briefly summarize our analysis of the merits of it, if you will, in conjunction with the criteria in the non-coastal zoning ordinance. The effect of the proposed amendments, this answers your question, I think, is that in the Greenbelt area provision, it only affects the current permitted facility because it's the only permitted facility in a Greenbelt. So that amendment would only affect this property. That's the effect countywide. And then with regard to the high fire hazard area provision amendment, the net result, I had a GIS preliminary analysis conducted that included all of the siting criteria, that it'd be 40 acres, and then that it would be allowed in a high fire hazard area. And the net result of this search is that there would be an additional 255 eligible parcels that could be considered for a conditional use permit. But keeping in mind, they would still have to meet the second half of the criteria that says that it has to be a less than significant impact under CEQA, and it would also have to meet the conditional use permit findings.
Couldn't this, as I was asking about this, I was given this information, but couldn't you also say none of them qualify because none of them have been previously approved in a greenbelt area?
If they're located in a green belt.
Yeah, but can't we just make that the criteria? I know, but the criteria is you have to be both.
Does
Well,
this open it up?
That would make it apply only to this. I mean, our intention is to make this apply to only this area, right? Not to make other changes, right?
Well, there are 10 different siting criteria. So, they're prohibited in all those areas. So if we said, I guess I'm not following
I
that
think
question.
the difference is between a green belt and between the open space zone. In open space zones countywide, you can get a lot more in, but as far as green belt specifically, there's only one that has a permitted one prior to it becoming a green belt.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
But this will allow for it in other open space areas that are not in green belts?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
With the other 10 criteria, though, that would still overlay those open space areas.
Is that your intention? That you want this to apply to these others, or is it that we want to get this one approved?
Well, I think one, yes, it would get this one approved, but it would also, I think, clearly say to our planning department that the greenbelt area would no longer allow for this facility.
Great.
type. Right.
I got that. And
Okay.
how about these other 255 that are not in green belts but are in open space? Is it our intention that we want to try to open those up for discussion of motocross?
Well, I think staff is trying to find a way with the other criteria that at least would allow for, and I'm not sure how to phrase this, a fairness in the application process for a business interest to come forward and explore whether a CUP is available to them. So,
Okay. Yeah.
I
guess, and I'll just,
Yeah.
I'll want to ask, I saw Kim shake her head, so sometime at the appropriate time in this, I want to have that conversation. Because I came into this thinking this was an attempt to try to do something to make sure this business was not disadvantaged. But, and I'm fine saying, hey, they're in the open space, but they were there before the green belt, was a technicality, we have to fix this. If this instead is, we actually want to be able to go to the other open space areas that are not in the green belts, and we want to now allow motocross where we didn't used to allow motocross, then I have a different perception.
That was
of
not
this, so.
the intent.
Right.
What's that?
That was not the intent.
Right.
It's
Okay,
just,
so-
this is the outcome of this proposed
This is the outcome, but
language.
that's not the intent. So if the intent was not to do that, and I know we have to treat everybody fairly, I would like council to at least think about this, which is what if it was, you only can get it if you're both. In other words, if you were in a greenbelt area that, in advance, before it became a greenbelt area, because I know there's no other motocross already approved in a greenbelt area,
Right.
right? So if it says, if you were in a greenbelt area and you met this fire thing, then we know we don't inadvertently open it up to a bunch of others. And so think about that while you finish your presentation, unless you want to do that right now,
And
right?
It opens it up for not only continued
For other
motocross,
businesses.
but new motocross facilities in open space.
Right, so Chair Bennett, I just want to clarify, Kim Perlhart, the planning director, that these uses are allowed in the open space zone. So this is the zone that they are allowed in the open space zone. This is just saying that there would be 255 eligible parcels in the high fired hazard zone, which was prohibiting them, which the fire marshal has said that he can review them on a case-by-case basis with this additional language. They're already allowed in the open space zone.
But this now allows the fire marshal to do that review.
For these 255 eligible parcels, right.
So this action is expanding from that standpoint. If instead, yesterday when I was asking about this, not you, but when I was asking about this, I was told, look, there's no other place where there's been a motocross approved that is in a greenbelt, so this is only going to apply to this one site. So I'm trying to make that
or that qualifies for the greenbelt exception. And I would want, yeah, it might be do you know how many other parcels would be, meet the criteria in addition to the 255? In other words, this doesn't show, there could be 300 that are in non-fire, non-greenbelt areas.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know if we have that number, but
No, actually, currently, with all the siting criteria, there are two, this parcel and one other, and this one only because it previously had a permit. And if we change this, it opens 255 additional parcels that all the other siting criteria is applied to. But that's just a cursory review.
We haven't heard all the testimony, so
Right.
I'm not
Okay.
done yet. But let me say this. I certainly don't think we want to go from saying there are two places for motocross in Ventura County in the open space to 255 without a whole lot more conversation than what I think we've kind of arranged this for this one where we're trying to do an appropriate exception for the people that have the current motocross. So if we can, if that feels legal by the time we get to the end of this, that's where I would want to go. I don't know where the board would want to go. So thank you.
Okay. So getting back to the analysis of the other non-coastal zoning ordinance criteria, there are basically these three different criteria. Are there any public health, safety, or general welfare issues? Well, the motocross racetrack facilities are permitted use in open space zone with stringent standards. There are, and we felt that the proposed amendments to the fire hazard area standard adequately address public safety, health, and general welfare issues. Again, they need to make the finding that there's no significant impact with regard to fire hazard, and also all the CUP findings for any additional approvals. As far as general plan consistency, staff found that the analysis concludes that the proposed amendment is consistent with the general plan. Motocross facilities are permitted in open space, and general plan policies listed state that when a land use is permitted under the zoning matrix, it's deemed consistent with the general plan. And a complete general plan consistency analysis was performed that evaluated farmland resources, fire hazard, and land use issues, and that's included as Exhibit 5. Good zoning practice. Again, they're allowed use in the open space zone. The amended language requires a determination of, again, the same findings. And then also the Fillmore-Piru Greenbelt files indicate that, well, the ordinance itself says that allowed uses are not precluded from the Greenbelt area. And there's no evidence in the files that the Greenbelt authors intended to make this facility nonconforming. And then last is it consistent with the open space zone? And again, they're permitted with stringent standards and or conditional use permit. And outdoor recreation is one of the purposes of the open space zone. So last, just wanted to reiterate that staff recommends that the board approve this proposed text amendment for further processing. And the two potential outcomes of your directions today are that if you agree for further processing, the staff continues processing the CUP modification for the facility to renew their application or their conditional use permit. And the text amendment would be processed concurrently. It would go to the Planning Commission for a recommendation on the legislative act, and then back to your board for the final decision. If you do not agree and don't want us to process it any further, then it will remain non-conforming with the zoning ordinance, and the permit expires and the use would be discontinued.
Do we have any public speakers on this item? All right, we have no public speakers, so I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to ask Kim the question first, if you don't mind, because I saw you shake your head, and I just want to make sure I
I was talking to Rosemary about something else.
All right, great. No, when I raised the question about 5 minutes ago and stuff, but, so, from the standpoint of what I've suggested to county council for us to look at, if we're able to craft this in a way that it makes this exception, but it doesn't include the exception for staying on 255 from planning department standpoint, any problems with that?
No, as long as we're, I think we were trying to look at an unfair business advantage, like we were trying to, the standards for the CUP finding are still going to be there, right? They would still have to apply for all of that, but if it wasn't an issue with our legal department, we would process the text amendment in that manner.
Great. So I'll turn to our legal department, right? It's an interesting term for you guys, right? But what are your thoughts?
Well, the tricky issue here is when we're looking at the green belt and when the green belt was adopted, there is a rational basis to distinguish in our legal mind between this facility as existing before that was adopted and after. We're basically grandfathering them in, if you will, and that's consistent with the principle of allowing a non-conforming use to continue. But it gets trickier when you're looking at high fire hazard areas because they either exist or they don't. And my understanding of this site is it's always been in a high fire hazard area. It was a matter of the planning department not realizing that was the case. And so your board does have a lot of discretion in making this type of legislative land use decision. And so it's hard to opine now, whether or not something would withstand legal challenge, but it would be harder from a legal standpoint to defend based on a rational basis, allowing this site to continue in a high fire hazard area, but not allowing anyone else to operate in a similar area on that basis. It's not to say it couldn't be done, but it's harder to justify. Does that make sense? And so I can't provide a yes, no at this point, but we would want to look into that further.
So I guess what I would be interested in is trying to keep this business going, an ongoing entity, and to perhaps, since this, all we're doing today is if we don't do action, they become non-conforming. But if we say continue to process, but let's not adopt this specific text amendment until county council has a chance to try to see if we can keep it from opening the door to 255 in a way that the county council feels comfortable with. Is that, in other words, no intention of...
And I should just clarify, and maybe planning could follow up on this. Out of the 255 other potential sites, I'm not sure if any of those have been analyzed in terms of all of the other CUP requirements for this specific use. And so once you run those sites through those additional requirements, I have a feeling that that list will be a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm. Well, my thought was we were coming here to try to get this site grandfathered in and try not to open up open space to lots of others. If that's not the wishes of the board, but that's so I'm looking to other board members. Is that?
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I think that this was brought to our attention, this inconsistency with this coming forward. I will look to legal counsel to tell us, if we move forward, if we have the high fire area designation, and it looks that by putting that as another layer, that we are protecting the public safety interest there, and I'm just concerned that we're legally, if we do move in this direction with both these actions, that we're going to be okay legally with not infringing on business opportunity.
Can I ask this question? I mean, if we make some kind of motion to direct you to spend a little bit more time, does this still keep them in business and going and take the time necessary to accomplish what Supervisor Long and I have both just said?
Right, absolutely. He is continuing right now because they have filed for the permit that he needs, and under the ordinance, it allows him to operate under the manner under his use permit right now. So he's not in any danger of shutting down.
It's in your district, but
Well,
I'd make some...
and I too, when I saw the potential of those 255, I gasped, but I don't see a proliferation of this type of use there for a variety of other conditions that we're going to put in a CUP process. But it does give you pause, thinking, does this open up floodgates in the open space, and do we need further refinement of the conditions?
Right. Yeah, particularly in the high fire risk areas,
Right.
I mean, with the drought
Right.
and all
Right.
of that stuff. So,
So
is
yeah, I'm good with that, yeah.
All right, so I guess I'll just craft a motion, which is to probably best thing to do is simply table this action. Does that work for everybody? Which is we take no action except direct you guys to work on it and come back
I
when
think if you
it's
table it,
ready?
you got to bring it back to untable it, so you probably just want to continue it.
Well, just how about continue it or direct staff to, how about we won't do anything with the motion except make a separate motion, which is direct staff to
Well,
work on it and come back when you're ready to accomplish what you think you've just heard us say.
Excuse me if I might, the screening process is for you to give us this kind of feedback, and then we continue processing and really can dig into the nitty-gritty of it and bring it back with the project with final language that would address your concerns.
Okay, so you're saying this is a pre-screening action?
Yeah.
But I just don't want in the pre-screening to be approving the current text amendment.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yes, I understand that, and we've heard your direction, and
Okay.
it's at
All
the
right.
board's.
Okay, so we're not
board's
approving the
discretion.
text amendment at this point.
That's correct.
We're simply giving you feedback.
That's correct.
Right. Great. Is that
I
the
just,
feedback?
my thoughts on this, one, it would be nice to tailor it in a way where they can have an extension on their CUP without having to change it for all properties equally zoned. And I note that we do rely a lot now on these text amendments, and that does give me concern, because when you have projects that are specific and you want to be able to work with them, instead of waivers or variances, we're changing them in the ordinances, and that gives me concern if we might have a better way of doing this so we don't loosen up our standards. When we have cases that are exceptions, for example, ones that are already existing, ones that we acknowledge should be grandfathered in. And I think we have several of those cases around the county, and I'm just concerned with the kind of growth-inducing aspect of taking the zoning ordinances and amending them for uses that then open it up everywhere in the county. So just, I'm not so sure I want this to go through, just because the mechanism that we're using and the implication of it currently. So I can't support moving it forward to the Planning Commission until we have more information. But if we can keep them obviously operating, and that's the goal there, I think we should have a broader discussion.
And Supervisor Parks, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to clarify for the board's information, the challenge with this use in this facility is that it doesn't, a CUP extension cannot be approved right now because it doesn't comply with the existing zoning ordinance. And so there is a mechanism for continuing non-conforming uses, but here we can't take advantage of that because the existing site doesn't, and it was actually approved even though it wasn't in conformance with the then existing zoning ordinance. And so it's instead of having a legal non-conforming use, it's an illegal non-conforming use, if you will.
Right, and I know we've had other mistakes made. I think of like Hagel Lumber and others. But maybe you could just answer directly then about the other mechanisms such as waivers and variances that can be considered. I know I come from a place where waivers were pretty standard ways of doing it. Instead of changing our ordinance to suit the use, it's basically waiving some of the ordinance requirements.
maybe Ms. Prilhart could address, I'm not aware of a waiver process existing in our non-coastal zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Yeah, correct. So we don't have a waiver standard now. We do have a variance, but the variance standards that we have don't apply to this, it doesn't apply to this kind of use. It applies to fences and setbacks and heights and things like that, but it doesn't apply to that. So, I mean, I hear your concern and I understand that. It's something that we can work in. I think that we could do two things. We could explore it a little bit further with county council and come back for another pre-screening, right? And maybe do a little bit more analysis on the 250 and see if we can make everybody more comfortable. Or you can, screen it through and with the advice that you've just given us, and that's what we will work to process.
I think we had the movie studio that wanted to be in the hills, was it above Simi Valley? And to do that, we'd have to change all open space to and then allow these. And I'm just wondering, if there's other mechanisms at place than opening up the, land for more uses.
But I think that would also apply if we loosen the variance standards. It would also allow, for more uses.
And we can. That's something that could be studied and brought back to.
Right.
But I know variances have very strict laws that apply to them. I don't think it's the same case with waivers. We don't have mechanisms for waivers. Maybe it's something we do want to look at. So I'm just concerned about trying to fit one use in and thereby opening it up. And that's what's been expressed here.
And just let me explore the issue of waivers with you a little bit further. So we do have waivers only as they apply right now to film permits, to saying if you're going to do some noisy filming after 10 at night, you have to get the majority of your neighbors, or 50 plus 1%, to sign a waiver. So in speaking of waivers, are you talking about the surrounding community or a waiver from the standards of the
Waivers from the
code?
standards. For
Okay.
example, a shopping center wants to move in, they're supposed to have 3,000 parking spaces, and you're going to waive that condition and say 2,500 will work, for example.
Okay. So we're
Okay.
kind of still at the two options.
So hearing you up to, I'm fine with the thing going forward, but I'm going to make the motion so that I feel comfortable with this, which is approve the pre-screening of this project to go forward with the board direction that the text of the NCZO text amendment that comes back will be such that it will allow this project to go forward and not open up motocross to more sites than currently we have opened up. So, see what I'm saying with the text amendment? Just, in other words, do the work with
Leroy, can we do that?
Yeah, I think the board can do that, but I want to make clear if the board would like it to come back to the Board of Supervisors for follow-up, or they're directing it go forward through the process, which would it go to the Planning Commission next? So
in other words, do we want to see the text amendment before it goes to the Planning Commission?
because I think that, the purpose of the screening is not to unnecessarily waste the applicant's time and staff's time. And I think in the earlier motion, I think was fine to ask staff to do a little more work and bring it back to the Board of Supervisors.
All right, that'd be my motion. Let's bring the text amendment back.
All right.
As when it works for county council.
And that gives us enough time to do some legal research and
Great.
add that.
That way you're not going forward and then having us say, hey, we don't like what you took to the planning commission, and that would be wasting everybody's time.
As well as consider other options if they are available. Is that okay for the maker of the motion?
Sure, anything that
We'll look
works to get us where we want.
From the legal side, other options to achieve the goal. I mean, you've expressed the
Exactly.
goal, and we'll look at what options there might be for that.
Okay.
But Leroy, if this takes a week, a month, 10 months, 2 years for it, does it put this other business in jeopardy anyway?
No.
We're okay?
No.
Okay.
All right.
The action will allow that to move forward.
So that's my motion, to direct staff to come back with solution to the concerns expressed by the board about the text amendment opening it up to 255 other parcels. That work?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been approved 5-0, and I hope we've clearly communicated to the current operators I'm not trying to throw curves there.
Right.
We're trying to make sure we don't have unintended consequences. All right, we now are at our 11 o'clock Ventura County General Plan.
Good morning, Chairman Bennett, members of the board, Mr. Powers. My name is Rosemary Rowe, and I manage the long-range planning section of the Planning Division. And I'm here today to give the 2014 General Plan Annual Report. Each year we give an annual report to your board, and that report is then subsequently submitted to two different state agencies, Housing and Community Development and the Office of Planning and Research. Its primary purpose is to summarize the status of the Ventura County General Plan, including the housing element. And traditionally, the Planning Division has also used this as an opportunity to update your board on the work program going on in the long-range planning section, which is responsible for general plan and ordinance revisions. As you can see here, there are 4 different sections to the annual report, which is in Exhibit 1. The first section provides an overview of the general plan status and its consistency with state law. We did find that the general plan is consistent with the mandatory requirements set by the state's guidelines. Second section is a review of the progress in meeting our regional housing needs assessment. This report is the final progress report for the old housing element, which was from 2006 to 2013. And during that period of time, 1,276 dwelling units, or about 90% of our previous RENA allocation, were built during that cycle. Third section is summarizes the status of various housing element programs. The most recent action taken by your board occurred on March 18th when you adopted an amendment to the density bonus ordinance, and you also directed staff to postpone 2 programs until we receive a decision that is pending from the state Supreme Court on related legal issues. The fourth section of the annual report, which will be the focus of my presentation today, includes a wide variety, a lot of detailed information on our work program, and the 2 parts that I will focus on are completed projects and our active projects. Completed projects last year and through the current time, I was anticipating a screening of the motocross racetrack facilities. I'll have to mark that as not quite completed. But the 2 major programs that we did complete last year included the 2014 to 2021 housing element and the density bonus ordinance, which were adopted by your board on October 22nd of last year.
And certified by the state?
Certified by the state, yes. We have...
Does that give us like 8 years now before we have to do another housing element?
That is correct.
That's nice. I'll free up
Yes.
staff on it.
Our active projects, we have 5 different projects that are active. These are our large, major projects that are multi-year efforts, and they include a wireless ordinance, 3 different projects funded by the Coastal Impact Assistance Program, or CIAP, and the Saticoy Area Plan, and I will go through each of these. The first is the Wireless Communications Facilities Ordinance, which your board initiated in November of 2012. We did complete a public outreach program for that project last spring, and we also issued what we call an administrative draft to other county agencies in the fall of last year. However, we did have a bit of a delay in that project because we lost our project manager. We're back on track, and we expect to issue the non-coastal version of this project will go out for public review sometime this summer, and we expect to be back before your board in the fall of this year with the non-coastal ordinance for wireless communication facilities. After that, we'll then initiate the coastal version of that ordinance. As I mentioned before, we have 3 CIP grant-funded projects. The first of those 3 is called Coastal Biology. This project is focused on habitats within the Santa Monica Mountains, and it will identify necessary policy or procedural changes that are deemed necessary to help protect those habitats. We're also working on an update to our landscape design criteria, which will apply to both coastal and non-coastal areas. It was last updated in 1992, and the focus of this update is to incorporate the state's water-efficient landscape ordinance into our county regulations. We are working on the second phase of our LCP amendments, and there are 7 different topic areas covered in this phase of the amendment process. Our target date for bringing those amendments back to your board is in the middle of next year, and we hope to have those certified by the California Coastal Commission by mid-2016. Finally, there's the Saticoy Area Plan update. This was also separated into 2 phases because we had 2 different grants that were funding the 2 different phases. All the work on this project is funded through grants with the exception of the CEQA document. Last year we completed phase 1, which was focused on Old Town Saticoy, and in March of this year we held an all-day workshop before the Planning Commission to review key components of that area plan. Based on the input that we received from the Planning Commission, staff is now completing the project description, and we will soon initiate the CEQA process for that project. This project has a firm deadline of October of 2015. In addition to the major projects that we're conducting, we're also engaged in a variety of related work programs. For example, we're currently working with the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, to update their land use maps. This is actually quite a detailed and lengthy process, but the purpose of that is to try to get SCAG's land use maps more in line with our maps and our actual land use, so that their regional transportation plan and their other planning efforts, including the next RENA, are based on actual conditions in Ventura County. That concludes my presentation of the 2014 annual report. Staff does recommend that your board receive and file this report so that we can submit it to the 2 state agencies, and staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Do we have questions for staff?
I do want to compliment the planning department and Kim Prilhart specifically for reaching out across to the LA County side, where they're working on their mountain local coastal plan and making sure that they can preserve their ridge lines and make sure that there's not a lot of braiding going on there. And they have, I think, some of the best standards available, specifically to Zev Yaroslavsky's area. So it's nice if we, since we share the mountains together, that we share the same kind of land use patterns, and that would be to protect what we can. And so I'm really pleased to see that we have reached across the border on that one.
Thank you.
Okay. We're ready for a motion? Huh? But no public speakers? Things are so calm and under control in the planning department regarding the general plan.
It's all an illusion.
Doing a good job. Thank you, Kim.
Certainly great having our RENA numbers issue in our plan until 2021, our housing plan taken care of.
Thank you.
All right, we have 10 minutes. We will not, we'll start up again at 11:30, but we'll do that promptly at 11:30 if we can, so we can stay on time.
Could have combined the last 5 meetings we've had up here this last month all in one meeting. If Mr. Powers would get together and start talking about it. Otherwise, I asked Brian what's happening.
Okay, 11:30, Airport, Department of Airport, public hearing. Mr. McNamee, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Supervisors, Mr. Powers. My name is Todd McNamee. I'm your Director of Airports for the County of Ventura. This is our annual public hearing for our rent and fees out at the 2 county airports. And so I have a brief presentation to share with you. I wanted to start off with just a little bit of history. If you remember back in 2010, we had accomplished a full cost recovery analysis, and it showed a couple of things. One is that the aviation rates were being subsidized by business park revenue, and also when we looked at comparables in our area that we were about 30% below the low end of market. And so we had proposed a 30% increase. We had compromised in 2010 and did 10% of that. The next year, another compromise to do half again, so 5%. And then annual CPI since then, which is sort of been around 2% for the last couple of years, and then we're at not even 1% this year, January to January numbers. And so we started off in 2009 with rates of about 9.4 cents per square foot per month for private hangars. This year we'll finally get to 11.5 cents, and the rate we actually set back in 2010 was 12.5. So while it may be compounded, I know Mr. Timms has some information that's going to vary slightly from this. We're essentially 2/3 of the way there after 5 years. We haven't even achieved the 2010 rates that we set. Next year is our next full-blown cost recovery analysis, and we'll see how we're doing there and decide then whether we want to stick with the second compromise we made, which is annual CPI until we get there. The problem is with CPI, we're doing CPI as CPI happens. We're not gaining any ground. We're just keeping pace slightly below what we should be. So we'll just see how the cost recovery analysis shows the numbers next year, and then we'll make some decisions on how we want to adjust rates then, whether we stick with this annual CPI or look to do something different.
I do want to say this. I mean, I think it was a good faith effort to try to do the compromise to get there, but from my own personal opinion, this one supervisor would say we have to get the full cost recovery and we have to do it next year. I mean, we've phasing it in. That's my own thought.
Yep, it's taken a little longer than I'd hoped when we made those concessions a few years ago. So this year we're talking about 0.77%. That is 1/10 of a penny for private hangars and 2/10 of a penny for county stock in terms of increases. That equates to $2 a square foot increase on private hangars and $3 for county hangars. Some of that is rounding. If it came out to $118.50, the rate would be $119. In past years, it's actually rounded down. So that happens one way or the other every year. But the big thing is on the aviation permit rate, if you remember, we had some independent flight instructors and also some mobile mechanics. We no longer have independent flight instructors. They've all associated themselves with businesses at the airport now. But I do believe we still have 4 independent or mobile mechanics. So if you remember back in 2010, those rates were artificially low, and we've been sort of doubling them each year, and this is the last year where we get to full cost recovery at the rate of $2,400, give or take.
Do you still have the school run by Clay?
No, CP Aviation, that was Clay Phelps.
Yeah.
No, he's back at Santa Paula. You know, once their runway was rebuilt there, he lasted another 6 months or so at Oxnard and then relocated back. So,
why does it cost $2,500 to put that permit together? How much time do you spend?
So it's not so much putting the permit itself together, but it's monitoring it. So we go out. These are annual permits, so they're up to 52 uses, and so with that comes operations officers' time to monitor the activity during each of their uses. And so if you start adding even just a half hour at a time over 52 uses, that does add up. The other thing we're working to do, again, is try and balance that where the business park is a great asset for us there at the airport, and it does help us maintain low rates for the aviation users at the airport. And so, but this number used to be in the 40% range on non-aviation that you see up in the right-hand corner. So we were trying to achieve some balance where it was sort of a third non-aviation, a third small general aviation, and then a third commercial aviation, which are our aviation businesses. And so I just wanted to show that we're getting there. Non-aviation being about 32%. Terminal revenue actually at Oxnard would be considered non-aviation revenue as well. That's one business and 4 rental car agencies. But you can see GA fees, this is landing fees and fuel flowage. That combined with hangars and tie downs is about 30%. And then miscellaneous aviation with our aeronautical service providers is about another 33%. So that balance, we're getting there to where the brunt of the revenue isn't all coming from the business park anymore. It's getting more evenly distributed, which is one of the goals. So I just wanted to show
What's
that.
happened with the business park? Have you been able to get more? I know the sheriff left, a few things have gone on.
You know, we've actually, the sheriff, some of the office space remains vacant, but we have had some tenants come in. And the Sheriff Academy itself, we've had occupied almost the whole time since they left. I think there was maybe 3 months in between where it was not occupied. We still maintain a very high occupancy rate out at the business park overall. And that's it.
Right, we have a public speaker, unless board members have questions of Todd before we go to the public speaker.
Could I ask, we were looking at having experimental drone research there, and I was just wondering, when you talk about the aviation rates, would that apply to that kind of research?
It could sometime in the future. In the near term, I would say no. If anything, it would be a cost to us to implement some sort of range space for testing or flying of unmanned aircraft, with the exception of the possibility of bringing businesses to the airport where they may generate revenue by renting office space. But sometime in the future maybe, but not currently.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. David Timms. Good morning, Mr. Timms.
Good morning. My name is Dave Timms. I've spoken here before. I'm a resident of Simi Valley. I own an aircraft and a hangar at Camarillo Airport, and I'm representing the Airport Hangar Owners Association. You have the handout I gave you. Looking at item 24, I guess you're being asked to, besides adopting the rent and fee schedule, also approve the adoption of a resolution establishing rents and fees and insurance requirements for the Department of Airports, Supervisory District 3 and 5. I'm concerned that next year, when they come up with these rents and fees, they want to dismiss this standing agreement that the Department of Airports has had with the hangar owners, and I'll read it to you. If you look at page 3 of your handout, that was year 11 and 12. Fiscal year 11 and 12, it was establishing 11 cents per square foot per month. Then annual CPI using Los Angeles, Riverside, Orange County, all items for each following year until a rate of 12.5 cents is achieved. My concern is that next year they'll dismiss that agreement. That's been a long-standing agreement, and it goes up until last, including this year, that reads the same until 12.5 cents per square foot is achieved. So in adopting and agreeing to this adoption of the resolution, I'm concerned that it might be interpreted by the Department of Airports to dismiss that agreement. Going back to the first page of the handout I gave you.
It's true, I want to dismiss it.
In the second paragraph down, comparisons also show aviation rates 30% below the low end of the market. I did a little bit of research myself. I checked with 2 airports in Orange County, Hemet and French Valley. There they have newer hangars, larger hangars, electric doors, very near the cost we're paying right now, and they didn't even have to build the hangars. Those are rented hangars, somebody else built them. We actually had to build our hangars, we're just renting the space.
Excuse me, sir, do you know, you said very near our cost. What is their cost per square foot?
French Valley, $345 per month for a T-hanger. He did not build it, he's renting the space. He's renting the whole hangar.
But you know what the square footage rent is? Because that's what we have here, square footage.
Pardon?
Do you have square footage rent?
Those are not privately owned, those are rental hangars.
Mister, are you assuming the square footage is about the same on all T-hangars?
I haven't got the total square footage on the French Valley county hangars at $345 per square month, for the hangar. I do know, I saw the hangar. It has a very high ceiling. It's not the low hangars. And it has, I'm guessing, 30% more square footage than the comparable hangars here at Camarillo Airport. I'm going to have the specifics for you when it comes time to do the comparables. On your handout, the first page, it mentions comparables. I haven't seen the comparables, and that was perhaps comparables 4 or 5 years ago. A rate increase of 30% proposed for aviation rates. That's not going to be acceptable to the Hangar Owners Association. Down at the bottom, the total on the lower left-hand side, 19.8%. That's not compounded, but in fact, the rates were compounded, and it's compounded at 21%. The private hangars are now paying 22% above the original baseline set back in 2009. And you can see the CPI rates over on the far side. And the CPI rates were actually only 8.78% during that same period of time. The agreement for reference or indexing to CPI was only the last 3 years. The following pages in my handout are simply documentation for these figures I just gave you. And again, my concern is that approving this rent and fee, you'll be approving the resolution, which may be interpreted to be that you'll be rejecting the standing agreement. I would ask that if you approve this rent and fee, that there be a provision that it does not dismiss the standing rent and fee agreement. Thank you much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Timms. Appreciate your steady interest in this. Mr. McNee, anything else you want to add here before we take our action?
Yeah, if I could. You know, we compromised twice back in 2010 and 2011 to come up with this agreement that is in place. And it's not that we would dismiss it. It would be that we would look to consider something different, possibly. But the resolution and the way the rent and fee is drafted today is the same as it's been for the last 5 years. That in itself doesn't change how we would address it next year by adopting anything this year.
Well, I'd like to make it clear that as we adopt this, we are keeping open the option of giving you, full range to go where you need to go to get to come back.
Certainly, whatever we do will be fair and in consultation with the hangar owners. We're not just going to go unilaterally do something we never have. So.
All right. So we're ready for a motion? Or Supervisor Long has a comment?
Just to say that this was certainly before the Airport Authority, and there was support for it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it was approved by both the Oxnard and Camarillo Airport authorities, and Todd is doing a good job and his staff out there at the airport, so I just want to commend them for the work that they're doing.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you want to have our airport supervisors do this motion, or does it matter to you?
I somehow lost my screen, so it's good. Doesn't matter. We're there.
Great. All right.
What did you do?
That's all right.
I thought you had it.
This item's been approved. Mr. Timms, you look like you have something else you want to say to us.
Yes.
Real briefly, please.
This did go before the commission and the authority. However, this presentation suggesting a 30% increase was not made clear, and I don't know that that was included in the proposal to the commission and the authority.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Timms.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. We need one more vote.
Yeah, like I said, I'll go along with this. I think it's good, but I'd like to see us keep with our agreement. We can get there because at some point when we go above where we need to be. I'm sure we're not going to lower those rates.
Okay,
Thank you.
we are done with our agenda. We adopted our, so we're ready to go to closed session. Will there be an announcement?
We will have no announcements, Mr. Chair.
Good. We're going to adjourn from closed session. There will be no announcements out of closed session. Thank you very much. Let the record show on 11:40.